The stagecoach lurched to a halt in front of the general store, just as the sun began its descent toward the Colorado mountains. And through the dusty window, Isaac Ramsey caught his first glimpse of the woman who would change everything he thought he knew about himself, and what his heart could hold. She stepped down from the coach with her skirt caked in layers upon layers of trail dirt, her face streaked with dust that had turned to mud where sweat had traced paths down her cheeks. Her hair, which might have been carefully pinned that morning in whatever distant town she had departed from weeks ago, now hung in disheveled strands around her shoulders. The other passengers who disembarked looked travel-worn, certainly, but this woman looked as though she had walked through a dust storm, been dragged behind a wagon, and then decided to continue her journey anyway. Isaac stood on the wooden sidewalk outside his lawyer's office, where he had just finished signing papers related to expanding his ranch holdings. He had not expected the stagecoach today. He had not expected her today. The letter he received 3 weeks prior had been vague about arrival times, but it had been clear about one thing. Olivia Zimmerman had agreed to become his mail-order bride, to travel from her home in Missouri to Fairplay, Colorado, to marry a man she had never met and build a life in a place she had never seen. He watched as she lifted her carpet bag from the coach driver, thanking him with a voice that carried across the dusty street despite its obvious weariness. There was something in the way she held herself, even covered in grime and clearly exhausted, that made Isaac's breath catch in his chest. She did not slump or shuffle. She stood straight, looked around the town with clear eyes, and when those eyes found him standing there watching her, she did not look away. Their gazes locked across the 20 feet of dirt road that separated them. Isaac had been told by the letter-writing service that had arranged this union that Olivia was 24 years old, educated, and seeking a fresh start after the death of her parents. He was 28, a successful rancher who had built his spread from nothing over the past 8 years, and he wanted a partner to share his life with. The correspondence had been brief and practical. He had not expected poetry or passion from an arrangement like this. He had expected companionship, perhaps friendship in time, and someone to help manage the domestic side of ranch life that he had been neglecting in favor of breeding better cattle and acquiring more grazing land. But something happened in that moment when their eyes met. Something shifted in the air between them, some recognition that had nothing to do with letters or arrangements or practical considerations. Isaac felt his heart begin to pound in a way it had not done since he was a boy, and he watched as a flush rose to Olivia's cheeks beneath the dirt that covered them. He stepped off the sidewalk and crossed the street toward her, his boots kicking up small clouds of dust with each step. Up close, she was even more disheveled than he had initially thought. Her dress, which might once have been a respectable blue calico, was now a uniform brown color from the dirt. There was a small tear near the hem and another at the shoulder. Her hands, which she clasped in front of her, showed raw spots where blisters had formed and broken. But her eyes, those remarkable eyes that looked up at him now with a mixture of apprehension and hope, and something else he could not quite name, those eyes shone with an inner light that no amount of trail dirt could diminish. "Miss Zimmerman," he said, removing his hat and holding it in front of him. "I'm Isaac Ramsey." "Mr. Ramsey," she replied, and her voice was softer now that he stood close to her, musical in a way that made him want to hear her speak more. "I apologize for my appearance. The journey was more difficult than I anticipated." He shook his head. "You have nothing to apologize for. The trail from Missouri is hard on everyone. You must be exhausted." She smiled then, and it transformed her face entirely. Despite the dirt and the clear signs of hardship, her smile was radiant, full of genuine warmth and a hint of relief that made Isaac realize how nervous she must have been about this meeting. "I am tired," she admitted, "but I'm also very glad to finally be here. Your letters, though few, gave me hope during some very dark times. I'm grateful for this opportunity, Mr. Ramsey." "Isaac," he said quickly. "Please call me Isaac. We're to be married, after all. Formality seems unnecessary." "Then you must call me Olivia." He nodded, suddenly feeling awkward in a way he had not felt since his teenage years. "I've arranged for us to stay at the boarding house tonight, separately, of course. The Reverend is willing to perform the ceremony tomorrow afternoon if that suits you. I thought you might want a chance to rest and recover from your journey first." Something flickered across her face, an emotion too quick for him to identify. "That's very considerate. I must look a fright." "You look like someone who has been brave enough to cross half the country to start a new life," Isaac said, and he meant it. "That takes a special kind of strength." She looked at him with those luminous eyes again, and this time he saw tears gathering at the corners. She blinked them back quickly. "You're very kind. The letters did not fully convey how kind you are." "I'm not sure letters can convey much of anything real," Isaac said. "I think we'll have to get to know each other as we go." "I think you're right." He picked up her carpetbag, surprised by how light it was. This was all she had brought with her, all her worldly possessions condensed into one small bag. The reality of what she had given up to come here hit him suddenly. She had left everything familiar behind, traveled across dangerous territory, all to marry a stranger because her other options must have been even worse. The courage that took was staggering. "Come on," he said gently. "Let's get you settled at the boarding house. Mrs. Fletcher runs it, and she's a good woman. She'll help you with whatever you need." As they walked down the main street of Fairplay, Isaac was acutely aware of the curious stares from the townspeople. News traveled fast in a small town, and everyone knew that Isaac Ramsey had sent for a mail-order bride. Some people smiled and nodded. Others whispered behind their hands. Olivia kept her head high, looking around with obvious interest despite the attention. "It's smaller than I expected," she said, "but beautiful. The mountains are incredible." "You can see them from the ranch too," Isaac told her. "On a clear morning they look close enough to touch. I'd like that very much." Mrs. Fletcher was indeed waiting at the boarding house when they arrived. She was a widow in her 50s who had been running the establishment for the past decade, and she had a reputation for being both practical and kind. She took one look at Olivia and immediately ushered her inside. "You poor dear," she said, her voice full of maternal concern. "You look like you've been through hell and back. Come with me. I've got a bath already heating, and I'll bring up some stew and bread. You'll feel like a new person after a good wash and a hot meal." Olivia looked back at Isaac with an expression of gratitude. "Thank you, Isaac, for everything." "I'll come by tomorrow morning," he said. "We can talk more then when you've had a chance to rest." He watched as Mrs. Fletcher led Olivia up the stairs, and he found himself reluctant to leave. There was something about her, something beyond the physical attraction he felt, though that was certainly present despite her disheveled state. There was a quality to her spirit, a light that seemed to emanate from within her, that drew him in a way he had not anticipated. The walk back to his ranch took 40 minutes on horseback. His spread was 3 miles outside of town, nestled in a valley with good grazing land and a reliable creek running through it. He had built the house himself with help from neighboring ranchers, and he was proud of what he had created. It was a solid 2-story structure with 4 bedrooms, a large kitchen, a sitting room, and a wide porch that wrapped around 3 sides. He had built it larger than necessary for a single man because he had always planned to have a family someday. That night, lying in his bed and staring at the ceiling, Isaac could not stop thinking about Olivia. The image of her stepping off that stagecoach, dirty and tired but undefeated, kept playing in his mind. Her smile, her voice, the way she had looked at him with such openness and hope. He had agreed to this arrangement for practical reasons, but something told him that what was developing between them was anything but practical. Morning came with the crow of his rooster and the lowing of cattle in the distance. Isaac fed his animals, did his morning chores, and then washed up more carefully than usual. He put on his best shirt, the dark blue one that his sister had sent him for Christmas the year before, and he combed his hair with more attention than it usually received. He felt nervous as he saddled his horse, an emotion that was foreign to him in most circumstances. He had faced down rustlers, survived harsh winters, built a business from nothing, but the prospect of spending the day with Olivia made his hands shake slightly as he guided his horse back toward town. She was waiting on the porch of the boarding house when he arrived, and the transformation was remarkable. Her hair, clean now and revealed to be a rich chestnut brown with hints of red in the morning sunlight, was pulled back in a simple bun. Her face, scrubbed free of trail dirt, showed delicate features with high cheekbones, a straight nose, and that same radiant smile he had seen the day before. She wore a simple green dress that Mrs. Fletcher must have loaned her, as it was not the same one from yesterday. She looked beautiful, but more than that, she looked like herself, no longer hidden behind layers of dust. "Good morning," she said as he dismounted. "Good morning. Did you sleep well? Better than I have in weeks. A real bed, a quiet room, no rattling of the stagecoach. It was wonderful." "I'm glad." He stood there for a moment, unsure of what to say next. "I thought perhaps I could show you around town today, let you get familiar with where things are, and we could talk, get to know each other a bit before tomorrow." "I'd like that very much." They walked through Fairplay together, and Isaac found himself seeing the town through her eyes. He pointed out the general store, the blacksmith, the church where they would be married the next day. He introduced her to people they met on the street, and he noticed how warmly she greeted everyone, how genuinely interested she seemed in the small details of life in this Colorado mountain town. They ended up sitting on a bench outside the general store, watching the activity of the main street. It was here that they really began to talk, and Isaac discovered that the woman who had agreed to be his mail-order bride was far more remarkable than any letter could have conveyed. "Tell me about your family," he said. "The letter from the agency mentioned that your parents had passed." "I'm sorry for your loss." Olivia's expression grew somber. "Thank you. It was scarlet fever last winter. They went within days of each other. My father first, then my mother. I think her heart just gave out from the grief of losing him. They were married for 30 years and they loved each other deeply. That must have been very hard for you." "It was the hardest thing I've ever been through. We weren't wealthy, but we had a small house in St. Louis. After they died, I realized that I couldn't afford to keep it on my own. I was working as a school teacher, but the salary wasn't enough. I had a few options. I could have moved in with my aunt, who has 6 children of her own in a tiny house, and made it clear I would be a burden. I could have accepted the proposal from Mr. Thornton, the banker who is 63 years old and has buried 2 wives already. Or I could take a chance on something new, something that might lead to a real partnership and a real life. So you chose to come west." "I chose to choose my own future, as much as any woman can in this world. When I saw your listing with the agency, something in the way you described yourself and what you wanted resonated with me. You wrote about wanting a partner, not just a housekeeper. You wrote about building something together. That's what I wanted too, a chance to build something, to be part of something meaningful." Isaac found himself moving closer to her on the bench. "I meant every word of what I wrote." I've spent the last 8 years building this ranch and it's successful now. I have good cattle, good land, enough money to live comfortably. But it's felt empty doing it alone. I want someone to share it with, someone to talk to at the end of the day, someone to make plans with. I want children someday, a real family. I want a home, not just a house. That's what I want too, Olivia said softly. I want to matter to someone. I want to build a life that means something. I want children to teach and nurture. I want to be a partner to someone who values that partnership. I think we might want the same things. She turned to look at him fully, and in the bright morning light he could see flecks of gold in her brown eyes. I think we might. Can I ask you something that might be too forward? Yes. When you stepped off that stagecoach yesterday and our eyes met, did you feel something? Something more than just nervousness about meeting? Olivia was quiet for a long moment, and Isaac worried he had indeed been too forward, but then she nodded slowly. Yes. I felt something I didn't expect to feel. Something that scared me a little, if I'm being honest. I thought this would be a practical arrangement. I didn't expect to feel drawn to you immediately. I felt it too, Isaac admitted. I've been thinking about it all night. I don't understand it, but I'm not going to question it. Sometimes the best things in life are the ones we don't expect. They sat together in comfortable silence for a while, watching the town go about its business. A freight wagon rolled by, kicking up dust. A group of children ran past, laughing and playing some game. The blacksmith's hammer rang out in a steady rhythm. Life continued around them, but Isaac felt as though he and Olivia existed in their own small bubble, separate from everything else. "Tell me about the ranch," Olivia said eventually. "What's it like? What would my days be like there?" Isaac thought about how to describe it. "It's 3 miles from town, which is close enough to get supplies regularly but far enough to feel like you have space. The house is good-sized. I built it myself with help from neighbors. There are 4 bedrooms upstairs, a kitchen and sitting room downstairs, and a porch that goes around most of the house. I have about 200 head of cattle right now, and I'm planning to expand. I have 3 horses, some chickens, 2 pigs, and a barn cat named Smoke who thinks he runs the place." Olivia smiled at that. "He sounds important." "He is. He keeps the mice away from the feed. As for your days, that would be up to you in many ways. I'd hope you'd help with the house, the cooking, the garden I've been neglecting. Maybe the chickens and the dairy cow I've been thinking about getting. But I'm not expecting you to work yourself to the bone. I can afford to hire help for the heavy work. I want you to have time for yourself too. If you want to keep teaching, we could see about getting you work at the town school. If you want to focus on the home, that's fine too. I want this to be a partnership, remember? That means we both have a say." "You really mean that, don't you, about partnership?" "I do. I saw what a good marriage looked like growing up. My parents were true partners. They made decisions together, supported each other, loved each other. That's what I want for us if we can build that." "If," Olivia repeated. "You think we might not?" Isaac turned to face her fully. "I think we will. I know that probably sounds crazy given that we just met yesterday, but I believe it. There's something between us already, something real. But I also know that belief alone isn't enough. We have to work at it. We have to choose each other every day. We have to be honest with each other even when it's hard. Can you do that?" "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Can you?" "Yes." They spent the rest of the day together, talking about everything and nothing. Isaac learned that Olivia loved to read, that she had taught children aged 6 to 12 in St. Louis, that she could play the piano though she had not touched one in months. She learned that Isaac had come to Colorado from Kansas when he was 20, that he had worked as a ranch hand for 3 years before saving enough to buy his own land, that he loved the mountains but sometimes missed the flat prairies of his childhood. They shared stories and dreams and fears, and with each passing hour, Isaac felt more certain that this woman was exactly who he had been waiting for. As the sun began to set, Isaac walked Olivia back to the boarding house. They stood on the porch, neither quite ready to say good night. "Tomorrow afternoon," Isaac said, "at 2 o'clock at the church. Are you certain this is what you want?" Olivia reached out and took his hand, the first time they had touched beyond a brief handshake the day before. Her hand was small in his, but her grip was firm. "I'm certain. Are you?" "More certain than I've been about anything in a long time." She smiled that radiant smile again, and Isaac felt his heart swell with an emotion he was not quite ready to name yet. "Then I'll see you tomorrow, Isaac Ramsey." "Tomorrow, Olivia Zimmerman." He rode back to the ranch in the gathering darkness, his mind full of thoughts of the woman he would marry the next day. The house felt even emptier than usual when he returned, but it was a different kind of emptiness now. It was the emptiness of anticipation, of a space waiting to be filled. He went to bed early, knowing sleep would be elusive, and he was right. He lay awake for hours, thinking about Olivia and the life they would build together. The next morning dawned clear and beautiful, the kind of perfect autumn day that made Isaac grateful to be alive. He did his chores with unusual speed, then took extra care in getting ready. He wore his best suit, the black one he had bought in Denver 2 years ago and had only worn 3 times since. He shaved carefully, combed his hair, and looked at himself in the small mirror above his wash basin. He looked nervous, he thought, but also happy. He arrived at the church in town at 1:30, too early but unable to wait any longer at the ranch. Reverend Matthews was already there, along with his wife Clara, who would serve as one of the witnesses. His ranch foreman, Tom Peterson, had agreed to be the other witness, and he arrived shortly after Isaac, clapping him on the shoulder with a grin. "Nervous?" Tom asked. "Terrified," Isaac admitted. "That's how you know it matters." Then the church door opened, and Olivia walked in, and Isaac forgot to breathe. She wore a simple white dress that Mrs. Fletcher must have helped her acquire, and her hair was pinned up with small white flowers woven through it. She carried a small bouquet of wildflowers, and her face glowed with happiness and nervousness in equal measure. She was the most beautiful thing Isaac had ever seen. She walked down the short aisle alone, and when she reached Isaac's side, she looked up at him with those remarkable eyes. "Hello," she whispered. "Hello," he managed to reply. "You look beautiful. You look very handsome." Reverend Matthews cleared his throat gently, and the ceremony began. It was simple and quick, the traditional words spoken with gravity and meaning. Isaac said his vows, promising to love and cherish Olivia, to be faithful to her, to build a life with her. Olivia said her vows, promising the same, her voice steady and clear. They exchanged simple gold bands that Isaac had purchased from the general store the day before, and when Reverend Matthews pronounced them husband and wife, Isaac leaned down and kissed Olivia for the first time. It was a gentle kiss, appropriate for a church and witnesses, but Isaac felt it all the way to his toes. Her lips were soft, and she kissed him back with a sweetness that made him want to pull her closer and deepen the kiss. But propriety held him back, and he pulled away after a moment, seeing his own feelings reflected in her flushed cheeks and bright eyes. They signed the marriage certificate, thanked the reverend and the witnesses, and then walked out of the church as husband and wife. A small crowd had gathered outside, and people congratulated them warmly. Mrs. Fletcher hugged Olivia and pressed a basket into her hands. "Supper for tonight," she said. "You shouldn't have to cook on your wedding day." They ate a simple meal at the hotel restaurant with Tom and his wife Sarah, who Olivia liked immediately. Sarah was a warm, talkative woman who promised to visit the ranch soon, and help Olivia get acquainted with the area. After the meal, as the sun began to lower in the sky, Isaac brought his wagon around, having prepared it that morning to transport Olivia and her meager belongings to the ranch. The ride to the ranch was quiet, both of them seemingly lost in their own thoughts. Isaac was intensely aware of Olivia sitting beside him, her shoulder occasionally brushing against his as the wagon rocked over the uneven road. She looked around with interest, taking in the landscape that would now be her home. "It's beautiful," she said as they crested a rise and the ranch came into view below them, nestled in the valley with the mountains rising behind it. "Isaac, it's really beautiful. It's home," he said simply. "Our home now." He helped her down from the wagon when they reached the house, his hands on her waist, and he was reluctant to let go. She looked up at him with an expression that made his heart race, and for a moment they just stood there, looking at each other in the golden light of the setting sun. "I'm glad I came here," Olivia said softly. "I was so scared, Isaac. The whole journey I was terrified. What if you weren't what your letters suggested? What if I had made a terrible mistake? What if I couldn't do this? But the moment I saw you, something settled in my heart. And every moment since has confirmed that this is where I'm meant to be." Isaac cupped her face gently in his hands. "I'm glad you came here too. I didn't know what to expect, but you're more than I could have hoped for. I know we have a lot to learn about each other. I know this won't always be easy, but I meant every word of those vows, Olivia. I'm going to do everything in my power to make you happy and to build a good life with you." "I believe you," she said, and then she rose up on her toes and kissed him. This kiss was different from the one in the church. This kiss held promise and passion, the beginning of something deep and real. Isaac pulled her closer, and she came willingly, her arms wrapping around his neck. They stood there in the yard, kissing like newlyweds should, until Isaac finally pulled back with a breathless laugh. "I should show you the house," he said, "before it gets too dark." "Yes," Olivia agreed, though her eyes sparkled with mischief. "You should definitely show me the house." He gave her a tour, pointing out the kitchen with its large cast iron stove and the sitting room with the stone fireplace he had built. Upstairs, he showed her 3 of the bedrooms, saving the largest one for last. This was his room, he explained, though he had changed the bedding that morning and cleaned thoroughly. If she wanted a different room, he would understand, he told her. They could take this as slowly as she needed. Olivia looked at the large bed with its new quilt, then turned to look at him. "We're married, Isaac. This is where we both belong." The tenderness and passion they shared that night exceeded anything Isaac had imagined. Olivia was shy at first, but her shyness gave way to genuine desire and affection. They learned each other slowly, carefully, with a consideration that spoke to the deeper connection forming between them. When they finally fell asleep in each other's arms, Isaac felt a peace he had not known he was missing. The next weeks fell into a comfortable rhythm. Olivia threw herself into making the house a home, and Isaac was amazed at the transformation. Curtains appeared on windows that had been bare. The kitchen smelled constantly of bread baking or stew simmering. She planted bulbs in the front garden for spring flowers, organized his chaotic papers into a sensible system, and even won over Smoke the cat, who began following her around like a devoted dog. But more than the physical improvements, the house felt alive in a way it never had before. Olivia filled it with laughter and warmth. She would sing while she worked, her voice carrying through the rooms. She would read to him in the evenings, books she had brought with her or borrowed from Mrs. Fletcher. They would talk for hours, sharing stories from their pasts and dreams for their future. And at night, they would come together with a passion that only deepened as they grew more comfortable with each other. One evening about 3 weeks after the wedding, they sat on the porch together, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of orange and pink. Olivia had her head resting on Isaac's shoulder, and he had his arm around her waist. "I never expected to be this happy," Olivia said quietly. "When I got on that stagecoach in St. Louis, I hoped for stability, maybe companionship eventually. But this, what we have, it's so much more than I dreamed possible." Isaac pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "I know what you mean. I thought I was content before you came. I had my ranch, my work, my life. But I didn't know what I was missing until you arrived. You've made everything better, Olivia, everything brighter and more meaningful." She turned to look up at him. "I love you, Isaac. I know it's fast. I know we haven't known each other long, but I love you. I need you to know that." His heart felt like it might burst from his chest. "I love you too. I think I started loving you the moment you stepped off that stagecoach, covered in trail dirt but still holding your head high. You were the bravest, most beautiful thing I had ever seen. And every day since, I've fallen more in love with you." They kissed as the sun completed its descent, and the stars began to appear in the darkening sky. The world felt perfect in that moment, complete in a way that made Isaac grateful for every hardship he had endured to get to this point. The first real challenge came in late November when an early winter storm swept through the valley. Isaac had been in town getting supplies when the storm hit, and by the time he realized how bad it was getting, the snow was already falling heavily. He made it home, but just barely, with visibility almost zero and the temperature dropping rapidly. Olivia met him at the door, her face tight with worry. "Thank God you're back. I was so scared something had happened to you." "I'm fine," he assured her, stamping snow off his boots. "But we're in for a bad one. The cattle are in the near pasture, which is good, but we need to make sure we have everything we need because we might be snowed in for a few days." They worked together efficiently, bringing in extra firewood, checking their food supplies, making sure the animals closest to the house were secure. The storm lasted 3 days, dropping nearly 2 feet of snow and howling with winds that made the house creak and groan. But inside, Isaac and Olivia were cozy and warm. They played cards and read books and talked. They made love in front of the fireplace with blankets spread on the floor. They cooked together, Olivia teaching Isaac how to make a pie crust while he showed her his mother's recipe for beef stew. By the time the storm passed and the sun came out to reveal a world transformed into white, Isaac felt like they had crossed some threshold together. They had weathered their first storm, literally and figuratively, and come out stronger. Winter settled in properly after that, and ranch work became about maintenance and survival rather than growth. Isaac spent his days checking on cattle, breaking ice in water troughs, repairing equipment. Olivia kept the home fires burning, literally and figuratively. She also became a fixture in town on the days when weather permitted travel, helping Mrs. Fletcher at the boarding house and volunteering to teach a few students who were struggling with their reading. Christmas came, and it was the first time in years that Isaac's house felt truly festive. Olivia made decorations from pine boughs and ribbon. They cut down a small evergreen tree and decorated it with strings of popcorn and small ornaments Olivia crafted from scraps of fabric. On Christmas morning, Isaac gave her a beautiful shawl he had ordered from Denver, deep green wool with delicate embroidery. She gave him a new leather belt she had made herself, with his initials tooled into it. But the best gift was simply spending the day together, warm and content and deeply in love. As winter gave way to early spring, Olivia realized she was pregnant. She told Isaac one evening in March, her face glowing with happiness and nervousness. Isaac lifted her up and spun her around, laughing with pure joy. They were going to be parents. They were going to have a family. Everything they had talked about and dreamed of was coming true. The pregnancy was not easy. Olivia suffered from morning sickness that lasted most of the day for the first few months. Isaac would hold her hair back when she was sick, bring her cool cloths for her forehead, and worry constantly. But Olivia bore it with good humor, insisting that it was all worth it for the baby they would have. As her belly grew and the baby became more real to both of them, Isaac found himself marveling at the changes in their life. He had gone from a solitary rancher to a husband to an expectant father in less than a year. Olivia had gone from a lonely orphan in St. Louis to a beloved wife to a mother-to-be. The transformation was remarkable for both of them. Summer brought long days and hard work. The ranch was thriving, with healthy calves and good grass. Isaac hired 2 cowboys to help with the work, knowing that he wanted to spend as much time as possible close to the house as Olivia's due date approached. She continued to amaze him with her strength and resilience. Even heavily pregnant in the summer heat, she tended her garden, preserved vegetables for winter, and maintained their home with grace. In late August, on a hot afternoon when the air shimmered with heat, Olivia's labor began. Isaac rode to town at breakneck speed to fetch the midwife, Mrs. Patterson, who had delivered half the babies in the county. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next morning. Isaac paced the floor downstairs, terrified and helpless, listening to Olivia's cries and praying harder than he had ever prayed in his life. Finally, as the sun rose on a new day, he heard a different sound, the wail of a newborn baby. He raced up the stairs, his heart pounding, and found Mrs. Patterson cleaning a tiny, red-faced infant. Olivia lay in the bed, exhausted and pale but smiling. "You have a son, Mrs. Patterson said, placing the baby in a blanket. "A healthy baby boy." Isaac went to Olivia's side, tears streaming down his face. "Are you all right?" "I'm wonderful," she said, her voice hoarse but full of joy. "Look at him, Isaac, look at our son." Mrs. Patterson placed the baby in Olivia's arms, and Isaac got his first real look at his child. The baby was tiny, with a shock of dark hair and a red, scrunched-up face. His little fists waved in the air and his eyes squinted against the light. He was perfect. "Hello, little one," Olivia whispered. "I'm your mama, and this is your papa. We've been waiting for you." Isaac touched his son's tiny hand with one finger, and the baby's fingers closed around it reflexively. The feeling that washed over Isaac in that moment was indescribable. This was his son, his and Olivia's. A life they had created together, a person who would carry their love forward into the future. They named him Henry James Ramsey, after both of their fathers. Henry proved to be a good baby, sleeping reasonably well and growing fast. Olivia took to motherhood with the same grace she brought to everything else, though Isaac could see the exhaustion in her eyes during those first weeks. He helped as much as he could, walking the floor with Henry when he was fussy, changing diapers, bringing Olivia meals when she was feeding the baby. Those early months of parenthood were exhausting, but also wonderful. Isaac would often find himself just watching Olivia with Henry, marveling at the tenderness with which she held him, the love that shone in her eyes. And when she would look up and catch him watching, her smile would make his heart skip a beat all over again. As fall arrived and Henry grew stronger and more alert, life settled into a new rhythm. The ranch work continued, but it was punctuated now by the sounds of a baby, cries and coos and eventually giggles. The house that had once been so quiet now rang with life in its fullest sense. One evening in October, after Henry had been put to bed and they had a rare moment of quiet together, Olivia and Isaac sat on the porch wrapped in a blanket against the cooling air. It was almost a year since Olivia had arrived on that stagecoach, and both of them were thinking about how much had changed. "You remember what you looked like when you stepped off that coach?" Isaac asked with a smile. Covered head to toe in trail dirt, Olivia laughed. I was mortified. I kept thinking about how I must look to you, this strange man I was supposed to marry. I was certain you would take one look at me and change your mind. Never crossed my mind, Isaac said. I looked at you, and even under all that dirt, I could see something radiant. Your spirit, your strength, your beauty. It was all there, shining through. I think I fell in love with you in that moment before we even spoke a word to each other. I felt it too, Olivia said softly. I was so scared, but when I saw you standing there, something in me recognized you. Like my soul knew yours somehow. I know that sounds foolish. It doesn't sound foolish at all. I believe it. I believe we were meant to find each other, no matter how unlikely the circumstances. Olivia snuggled closer to him. I'm so grateful I got on that stagecoach. I'm grateful for every dusty mile, every uncomfortable night, every moment of fear, because it brought me here to you, to this life we're building together. I have everything I ever wanted, Isaac. A home, a husband I love deeply, a beautiful son. I'm happier than I ever thought possible. Isaac kissed her temple. So am I. You transformed my life, Olivia. You took a house and made it a home. You took a solitary man and made him a husband and a father. You brought light and love and meaning to everything. I can't imagine my life without you anymore. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars come out one by one. Inside the house, they could hear Henry stirring in his cradle, making the small sounds babies make in their sleep. Everything felt perfect and complete. The next years brought more joy and some challenges. When Henry was 2, Olivia became pregnant again. This pregnancy was easier than the first, and in the spring, they welcomed a daughter they named Alice Rose. She had Olivia's brown eyes and Isaac's dark hair, and she was a calm, happy baby who seemed to smile from the moment she was born. The ranch continued to prosper. Isaac's careful breeding program resulted in some of the best cattle in the region, and his reputation as a fair and skilled rancher grew. He was able to build a larger barn, buy more land, and hire more help. The success meant that Olivia did not have to work herself to exhaustion, and they could afford small luxuries like books from Denver and toys for the children. But more important than the material success was the life they had built together. Their home was filled with love and laughter. Dinner time was a joyful affair, with Henry telling stories about his adventures and Alice banging her spoon on her high chair. Evenings were spent together in the sitting room, with Isaac often reading aloud while Olivia mended clothes or worked on embroidery. Sundays they went to church as a family, and Isaac felt proud walking in with his wife and children, knowing that they were his, that he had built this. When Henry was 5 and Alice 3, they hired a young schoolteacher to come to the ranch 3 times a week to teach Henry his letters and numbers. Olivia assisted, her teaching experience proving invaluable. She blossomed in this role, and Isaac loved watching her work with their son, patient and encouraging. One challenge came in the form of a drought the summer after Alice was born. Rain was scarce, and the grass in the pastures turned brown and brittle. Isaac worried constantly about water for the cattle and whether they would have enough feed to get through the winter. But he and Olivia worked together to solve the problems. They rationed water carefully, moved cattle to areas where the creek still flowed, and worked with neighboring ranchers to share resources. It was a hard summer, but they got through it together, and their partnership only grew stronger. Another challenge came when Olivia's aunt from St. Louis wrote to say she was dying and wanted to see Olivia one last time. Despite their difficult relationship, Olivia felt she should go. Isaac arranged for Sarah Peterson to stay at the ranch and help with the children, and he accompanied Olivia on the journey back to Missouri. It was the first time Olivia had been back since leaving 3 years earlier, and the trip was emotionally difficult. Her aunt had softened in her illness, and they were able to make peace before she passed. Isaac stood by Olivia's side through the funeral and the settling of the small estate. On the train ride back to Colorado, Olivia cried in his arms. "I'm sad she's gone," Olivia said, "but I'm also grateful. Going back reminded me of how different my life could have been. If I had stayed, if I had married Mr. Thornton or lived as a spinster dependent on my aunt's charity, I would have been so unhappy. Coming to you, building our life together, it was the best decision I ever made." "I'm grateful you made it," Isaac said, holding her close. "Every single day I'm grateful." They returned to the ranch to find the children happy and healthy and the ranch running smoothly. Life continued its forward march, bringing new joys and occasional sorrows, but always with the foundation of love that Isaac and Olivia had built. When Henry was 7 and Alice was 5, Olivia became pregnant again. She was 31 now, and this pregnancy was harder on her body than the previous two. She was often tired, and there were some complications that worried both her and Isaac. But she was determined and strong, and in the spring, she delivered twin boys they named William and Thomas. The twins were healthy and loud, and suddenly the house felt very full and very loud. Those years with 4 young children were exhausting but wonderful. Isaac hired more help for the ranch so he could spend more time with his family. He taught Henry to ride and rope. He read stories to Alice, who inherited her mother's love of books. He walked the floor with fussy twins in the middle of the night, marveling at how his life had turned out. Olivia managed the chaos with grace and humor. She organized schedules and meals, tended to scraped knees and hurt feelings, taught lessons and kept order. But she also made time for herself and for Isaac. Once a week, Sarah Peterson would come and watch the children for an evening, and Isaac and Olivia would have dinner alone, talking like they had in the early days of their marriage. And at night, after the children were all asleep, they would find each other in the darkness, their love still burning as bright as it had that first year. As the children grew, the ranch continued to expand. Henry showed a real aptitude for ranch work, often accompanying Isaac on his rounds. Alice proved to have a gift for music, and Isaac bought a piano for the sitting room so she could learn to play. The twins were mischievous and adventurous, constantly getting into trouble but also bringing endless entertainment. One evening when Isaac was 43 and Olivia was 39, after they had put the children to bed and were sitting together on the porch as they had done countless times before, Olivia turned to him with a serious expression. "You ever regret it?" she asked. "Sending for a mail-order bride, taking a chance on a stranger," Isaac pulled her close. "Never, not for a single moment. You're the best thing that ever happened to me, Olivia. You and our children, this life we've built. It's more than I ever dreamed possible." "I feel the same way. When I think about that terrified young woman who stepped off the stagecoach, covered in trail dirt and so scared of what the future held, I want to tell her that everything is going to be more wonderful than she can imagine. That the man waiting for her is going to love her beyond measure. That she's going to build a life full of joy and meaning and love." "I saw past the trail dirt," Isaac said softly, "to your radiant soul, and every day since that radiance has only grown brighter. You light up my life, Olivia. You light up our children's lives. You make everything better just by being in it." She kissed him then, soft and sweet and full of the deep love that had only grown over the 15 years of their marriage. When she pulled back, Her eyes were shining with tears of happiness. "I love you, Isaac Ramsey, today and always." "I love you too, Olivia Ramsey, today and always." They sat together as the stars came out, listening to the sounds of their home. The occasional murmur from one of the children, the lowing of cattle in the distance, the rustle of wind through the trees. It was a symphony of the life they had built together, a life that had started with a leap of faith and a mail-order bride covered in trail dirt, but had blossomed into something beautiful and lasting. The years continued to pass, bringing both joy and sorrow as all years do. Isaac's parents both passed within a year of each other, and Isaac grieved deeply, but found comfort in Olivia's steady presence and the distraction of his children. Henry grew into a fine young man who took over more and more of the ranch responsibilities, allowing Isaac to slow down a bit. At 20, Henry married a local girl named Martha, and they built a house on the ranch property, planning to raise their own family there and continue the legacy Isaac had built. Alice went away to a music school in Denver for 2 years, studying piano and voice, before returning to Fairplay to teach music to the local children. She had inherited her mother's gift for teaching and her father's work ethic, and she quickly became beloved in the community. The twins, William and Thomas, both showed interest in different paths. William wanted to study law and talked about going to school back east. Thomas wanted to stay on the ranch and work with horses, showing a gift for training them that exceeded even Isaac's skill. As grandchildren began to arrive, first from Henry and Martha, then eventually from Alice when she married a banker's son from a neighboring town, Isaac and Olivia found new joy in this next phase of life. They loved being grandparents, spoiling the little ones and then sending them back to their parents. The house that had once been so quiet was now frequently filled with the sounds of multiple generations gathering for Sunday dinners or holiday celebrations. On their 25th wedding anniversary, Isaac and Olivia renewed their vows in the same church where they had first married. Their children and grandchildren surrounded them, and the whole town came out to celebrate. It was a testament to the life they had built, to the love they had shared, to the community they had become integral parts of. That night, back at the ranch with just the two of them, they sat on their porch as they had done thousands of times over the years. Isaac was 53 now, his hair graying at the temples. Olivia was 49, with silver threads running through her chestnut hair and laugh lines around her eyes. They had aged together, grown together, built a life together that exceeded anything either of them had imagined that day when she stepped off the stagecoach. 25 years, Olivia mused. How is that possible? It feels like yesterday and like forever all at once. I know what you mean, Isaac said, his arm around her shoulders. Sometimes I think about that first day, seeing you for the first time, and it's so vivid. Other times, I can barely remember a time when you weren't part of my life. We've been blessed, haven't we? With our children, our grandchildren, this life we've built. We've had challenges, certainly, but we've faced them together, and the joys have far outweighed the sorrows. Isaac nodded, pulling her closer. We've been very blessed. And it all started because you were brave enough to get on that stagecoach, brave enough to take a chance on a stranger and a new life. And because you were wise enough to see past the trail dirt to who I really was, Olivia added with a smile. I must have looked a fright that day. You looked beautiful. Tired and dirty, yes, but beautiful, and brave, and strong. All the things you still are today. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set behind the mountains they had watched together for 25 years. The ranch spread out before them, prosperous and thriving. In the house behind them, photographs documented the life they had lived. Weddings and birthdays, holidays and everyday moments, 4 children grown and grandchildren arriving. It was a legacy of love. "Do you know what I think about sometimes?" Olivia asked softly. "I think about that mail-order bride arrangement, how it was supposed to be a practical solution to practical problems, how it was meant to be a business arrangement, essentially. But what we found was so much more than that." "We found love," Isaac said simply. "Real, deep, lasting love. The kind that grows stronger over time instead of fading. The kind that survives hard times and celebrates good times. The kind that builds a family and a legacy." "Yes," Olivia agreed. "That's exactly what we found." As full darkness fell and the stars began to appear, they finally went inside, hand in hand as they had been for 25 years. The house welcomed them with its familiar warmth, a place that held decades of memories and love. They climbed the stairs to their bedroom, the same room where they had spent their wedding night and every night since, and as they lay down together, Olivia turned to Isaac with a contented sigh. "Thank you," she said softly, "for seeing me that day, for choosing me, for building this life with me, for loving me all these years." Isaac kissed her forehead tenderly. "Thank you for being brave enough to come, for choosing me in return, for making our house a home and my life complete, for loving me despite all my flaws. You're the best part of me, Olivia. You always have been." They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, as they had done for 25 years, and would continue to do for many years to come. The mail-order bride who had arrived covered in trail dirt had indeed revealed a radiant soul, and the rancher who had seen past the dirt to that radiance had been rewarded with a lifetime of love and joy. The years continued their steady march forward. Isaac and Olivia grew older together, their hair turning fully gray, their steps slowing slightly, but their love never diminishing. The ranch passed primarily into Henry's capable hands, though Isaac still enjoyed going out and checking on things when his body permitted. Olivia spent her days surrounded by children and grandchildren, teaching them to raid and bake and tend gardens, passing on the wisdom she had accumulated over the years. They celebrated their 30th anniversary quietly, just the two of them taking a trip to Denver to stay in a fancy hotel and see a show. It was a luxury they could now afford, and they enjoyed the adventure, but both agreed that the best part was simply being together, away from the everyday demands of life. More grandchildren arrived, and then great-grandchildren. The family tree that had started with just Isaac alone in a house had grown and branched and flourished. Sunday dinners at the ranch became major productions, with dozens of family members gathering around tables that stretched from the dining room into the sitting room. The house rang with laughter and conversation, and Isaac and Olivia would sit at the head of the table, looking around at all the faces, amazed at what they had created together. On their 40th anniversary, the whole family gathered for a massive celebration. A photographer came from Denver to take formal portraits of everyone. The local newspaper did a story on them, the mail-order bride and the rancher who had built one of the most successful ranches in the region and raised a family that was now integral to the community. At the celebration, each of their children spoke about what their parents' love had meant to them, how it had shaped them, how they tried to model their own marriages after the example Isaac and Olivia had set. Henry stood and spoke with tears in his eyes. "My father built this ranch from nothing through hard work and determination. But it wasn't until my mother arrived that this place became truly alive. She brought love and warmth and wisdom. She made us a family. And the love between my parents has been the foundation that all of us have built our own lives upon. They showed us what real partnership looks like, what real love looks like. We're all blessed to be their children." Alice spoke next, her voice clear and strong. My mother taught me to be strong and kind, to pursue my dreams but never forget where I came from. My father taught me that real strength includes gentleness, that success means nothing without love. Together, they've given us all a gift beyond measure, the security of knowing we're loved unconditionally and the example of how to love others the same way. The twins, now men in their 30s with families of their own, stood together, and William spoke for both of them. We were the babies of the family, and as twins we were a handful. But our parents never made us feel like we were too much or too difficult. They gave us space to be ourselves while also teaching us values and discipline. They loved us through all our mischief and mistakes. And now, as fathers ourselves, we understand even more deeply what a gift that was. When everyone had spoken and toasted and celebrated, Isaac and Olivia stood together, and Isaac addressed the assembled family. Your mother and I want to thank you all for being here, for the joy you've brought into our lives. When I sent for a mail-order bride 40 years ago, I was hoping for companionship and help on the ranch. What I got was everything I didn't even know to hope for. Olivia, you walked into my life covered in trail dirt, and I saw your radiant soul shining through. Every day since has been a gift. You've made me a better man, a better father, a better person. I love you more today than I did on our wedding day, and I didn't think that was possible. Olivia wiped tears from her eyes and smiled at him before addressing the family herself. I was so scared when I got on that stagecoach in St. Louis all those years ago. I was leaving everything I knew to marry a stranger in a strange land. But the moment I saw Isaac, something in my heart knew I was home. He's been my partner, my love, my best friend for 40 years. And all of you, our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, you're the fruit of our love. You're proof that taking chances can lead to beautiful things. You're our legacy and our greatest joy. The celebration continued late into the night, with music and dancing and endless laughter. When finally the last guests had left and Isaac and Olivia were alone, they walked slowly through their home, looking at the photographs and mementos that chronicled their life together. It's been a good life, Isaac said as they climbed the stairs to their room. The best life, Olivia agreed. Better than I ever could have imagined. That night, as they lay in their bed, both of them thought about the decades that had passed, the joys and sorrows they had shared, the love that had only deepened with time. They fell asleep holding hands as they had done for 40 years, two souls that had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful together. The years continued to pass gently after that. Isaac's health began to decline when he reached his late 60s, his joints aching and his energy not what it once was. But Olivia cared for him tenderly, just as he had always cared for her. They spent more time sitting on their porch, watching the world go by, reminiscing about their life together. Their children and grandchildren visited frequently, filling the house with life and activity, but the quiet moments together were what Isaac and Olivia treasured most. On a beautiful autumn day when the aspens were turning gold and the air was crisp and clear, Isaac and Olivia sat on their porch wrapped in blankets. He was 71, she was 67, and they had been married for 43 years. The ranch spread out before them, now in its fourth generation of stewardship, still thriving and successful. Their family had grown to include dozens of descendants, all carrying forward the legacy of love and hard work that Isaac and Olivia had established. I have no regrets, Isaac said suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence. Not a single one. If I could go back and live my life again, I wouldn't change a thing. Every moment, good and bad, led me to you and to this life we've built. Olivia squeezed his hand. Neither do I. Getting on that stagecoach was the best decision I ever made. You gave me everything, Isaac. A home, a family, a purpose, a love beyond measure. You saw past the trail dirt to who I really was, and you loved all of me. That's a gift I've treasured every day of our marriage. It was easy to love you, Isaac said softly. The easiest thing I've ever done. You made it easy. They sat together as the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant colors. The mountains stood eternal in the distance, witnessing yet another day in the lives of these two people who had found each other and built something lasting. Inside the house, the sounds of family preparing dinner drifted out to them. Henry and Martha had brought food and were staying for dinner with some of the grandchildren. The house that had once been so quiet would ring with laughter and conversation again tonight. "I'm ready," Isaac said quietly. "Whenever my time comes, I'm ready. I've lived a full life, a blessed life. I've loved and been loved. I've built something that will outlast me. I have no fear." Olivia felt tears slip down her cheeks, but she smiled through them. "I'm not ready to lose you, but I understand. And when my time comes, I'll be ready too, because I've lived the life I was meant to live. With you." They sat together until the stars came out, two people who had started as strangers, become partners, and ended as soulmates. The mail-order bride and the rancher who had seen her true value. The love story that had begun with a leap of faith and endured through decades of life's joys and challenges. The radiant soul and the man who had recognized it and cherished it. The story of Isaac and Olivia continued for several more years, with both of them defying expectations and remaining active and engaged with their family and community well into their 70s. But eventually, as happens to all people, their time came. Isaac passed first, peacefully in his sleep at the age of 76, with Olivia holding his hand. He had lived a full life and died knowing he was loved and had left a lasting legacy. Olivia grieved deeply, but found comfort in her faith, her family, and her memories. She lived another 3 years after Isaac's passing, spending her time with her children and grandchildren, telling stories about Isaac and their life together, ensuring that the love they had shared would be remembered and celebrated. When she finally passed at the age of 73, she died with a smile on her face, and those who were with her said her last words were, "I'm coming, Isaac." They were buried side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch, with headstones that read simply, "Isaac Ramsey, beloved husband, father, grandfather," and Olivia Ramsey, beloved wife, mother, grandmother. But those simple words held within them an epic love story, a testament to the power of taking chances, of seeing past surface appearances to the truth beneath, of building a life based on love and partnership and unwavering commitment. Their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren continued to gather at the ranch for generations, telling the story of how it all began. Of the mail-order bride who arrived covered in trail dirt, and the rancher who saw past it to her radiant soul. Of how they built a life together that became the foundation for all who came after. Of how real love, the kind that lasts, is not about perfection or ideal circumstances, but about two people choosing each other and continuing to choose each other every day. The ranch remained in the family, passed down through the generations, each new caretaker adding their own chapter to the story, while honoring the foundation that Isaac and Olivia had laid. The house, though updated over the years, retained its essential character, and there was always a sense of the love that had filled it from the moment Olivia first crossed its threshold as a new bride. Years turned into decades and decades into a century, but the story of Isaac and Olivia remained alive in the hearts and minds of their descendants. It became family legend, told and retold at gatherings, a reminder of where they all came from and the kind of love they should aspire to find. The photographs from their life together, preserved carefully in albums and frames, showed the evolution of two people who had started as strangers and became one through love and commitment and daily choice. The legacy they left was not just the successful ranch or the large family tree, though both were impressive. The real legacy was the example they set, the proof that love could be found in unexpected places, that taking chances could lead to beautiful outcomes, that seeing the true worth of another person and choosing to love them unconditionally could create something that lasted beyond a single lifetime. On the hill where they were buried, wildflowers grew thick every spring, and their descendants would often climb up there to sit and think and remember. The view from that hill showed the entire ranch spread out below, the mountains rising in the distance, the same view that Isaac and Olivia had loved for so many years. It was a fitting final resting place for two people who had loved this land and each other with equal passion. The story of the mail-order bride who arrived covered in trail dirt, and the rancher who saw past it to her radiant soul became more than just family history. It became part of the fabric of Fairplay itself, a story the town claimed and celebrated. When the Historical Society put together exhibits about the early days of the town, Isaac and Olivia's story featured prominently. When people talked about the good old days, they often mentioned the Ramseys as an example of what was best about that era: hard work, strong family values, and enduring love. But perhaps the most fitting tribute to their love was the simple fact that their descendants, generation after generation, sought to build marriages modeled after what Isaac and Olivia had shown them. They looked for partners who would be true equals, who would work alongside them, who would love them in good times and bad. They chose to see past surface appearances to the radiant souls beneath. They chose commitment and partnership and daily love. The story that had begun with a practical arrangement and a dusty stagecoach arrival had transformed into something far greater than either Isaac or Olivia could have imagined that day when their eyes first met across the street in Fairplay, Colorado. It had become a testament to the transformative power of love, to the possibility inherent in taking chances, to the beauty of two souls recognizing each other and choosing to build something together. And so the story ends as all good love stories should, with a legacy that outlasts the lovers themselves, with proof that love is real and worth fighting for, with the assurance that when two people truly commit to each other and build their life on a foundation of respect, partnership, and unwavering devotion, they create something that time cannot erase. The mail-order bride arrived covered in trail dirt. The rancher saw past it to her radiant soul, and together they built a love that would echo through generations, inspiring all who came after to believe in the possibility of finding their own lasting love against all odds.